Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, where I sit down with women to talk about their incredible personal and professional journeys of hope, passion, purpose, resiliency, and impact. Today's guest is Candice Snyder, who is the host of the globally ranked Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities podcast, gratitude ambassador, and mental health advocate. Her story is one of deep resilience, from job loss and relocation to divorce, miscarriage, and surviving the trauma of suicide within her family. Through all the changes and impact in her life, she chose to rise using adversity as fuel to create meaning and momentum for others. This episode is about turning pain into purpose and discovering what's possible when we keep showing up with heart. Let's get right into this and welcome Candice.
Thank you, Summer, for having me.
Absolutely. Before we dive into your professional journey and some of the things that you do, if you could describe your life to this point in one word, what would that word be and why is that word important to you?
I would say it's the word meaningful.
Mm.
Now, if you asked me that when I was younger, I would probably never say that. But looking back and all the things that I've gone through, I mean, God forbid I died tomorrow, I would feel like I had a meaningful life, that I did things and inspired people and helped people. And I would say it was meaningful.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that word. That is meaningful, just in and of itself. So let's start with your personal story. What were some of the pivotal life events that shaped who you are today?
Okay. So, when I graduated high school and it was time to, figure out what my next move was going to be, what my career path was going to be, my father said to me, you're going to pick a career, you're going to choose something that you can always fall back on, that if you leave to have a family, you can always come back and get a job, and that you're going to make decent money. And so I went to school to become a dental hygienist, which was not something I was passionate about, but I did love helping others. So from that realm, it was like a fit because I like to help people. But had he not said that to me, it is not the career path I would have chosen.
Mm.
And it was difficult. Back then when I graduated, it was a 2-year program, but it should have been a 4-year program. The year after I graduated, they made it a 4-year program across the country.
Wow.
So nowadays, you're going for 4 years, you're getting a bachelor's. So I get through school with a few challenges. They actually thought I wasn't going to graduate because I ended up in the school hospital because I threw out my back.
Oh.
So I threw it out lifting a 3-year-old into one of those old barbershop style dental chairs. And so while I was there, they had me in traction and I'm missing clinic. So the more I missed clinic and seeing patients, the further behind I was getting. So finally I signed myself out and I get through school. I do graduate on time. And then fast forward 14 years into my career, I have a life-changing injury where I fall off a broken dental chair. And it was career ending because the more I worked, because I continued to work, 6 months for full time. And then at that 6-month mark, I went to part time, but I was continually getting worse to the point that I just couldn't do my job anymore.
Right.
And ended up with a couple back surgeries and lots of procedures. You name it, I had it. And, I really identified with being a dental hygienist. Yes, I was a wife and mom, but like my identity was really wrapped, at least in my mind, right? It was wrapped around, I'm a hygienist, I'm a provider.
Yeah.
At the time I was making more money than my then husband.
Yeah.
So all those things. And then when I didn't have that anymore, I was like, okay, who am I?
Right.
And it took me 10 years to start to figure that out.
Right. And I think a lot of people, both men and women, when they are separated from something that they love or that they've done all their lives, even after retirement, they think, well, who am I? How do I identify now? right? How do I tell people who I am, what I do, right? It's really interesting. And then our value seems to be attached to that,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
Hmm.
so, how do you move past that? So, wow, what a journey, what a professional journey. If you hadn't selected to be a dental hygienist, what would you have done? What do you think you would have done?
Okay, this is kind of funny because at the time, when I was like a junior, senior in high school, I read Sidney Sheldon's Rage of Angels.
Okay.
And it was about this like criminal lawyer, woman lawyer. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm going to go to law school. At the time, it was liberal arts. It's not like I was going to pre-med or
Right.
pre-law. It was like liberal arts to see if that's really what I wanted to do. And that's why my dad was like, oh no, I am not paying for you to go to school to take quote unquote time and space.
Oh,
That's what he said. So when I finally decided to go for dental hygiene, I was like, okay, maybe physical therapy, maybe nursing, maybe dental hygiene. I picked dental hygiene for two reasons. One, it was the least depressing between the physical therapy and the nursing.
okay.
But also, my dad worked for a dental company, a company that made instruments. And there was a
Oh.
hygienist on the board. And he's like, you're going to talk to Regina. And that's how like the path happened that way. But had he not influenced me that way,
Yeah.
I would have definitely probably chose something else.
Gotcha. Wow.
Not really sure exactly what, but it wouldn't have been that.
Right. Okay. Well, at the very least, it got you through a lot of different things. It afforded you a certain lifestyle, right? And here's what I always say about dental. It's Monday through Friday. Whereas, I've worked in the medical field in mental health, and it is Monday through Sunday.
For me, it was Monday through Saturday.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you are
Yes.
open clinic on Saturday.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So we talked a little bit about your professional journey. Let's talk about some of the other things that you've experienced along your journey, such as loss, change, and adversity that could have shut you down, but instead you built something powerful with that knowledge, with that wisdom. What helped you begin again after these transitions, these major life changes?
After a move to California, and being there and trying to be PTA mom and all those things, classroom mom, I needed to do something for myself, and my kids didn't want me around as much, right? So I found direct sales by accident. That path of being in direct sales, or some people refer to it as multi-level marketing, opened up community for me. It opened up personal growth for me. And it helped me realize that I did have something more to offer than just quote unquote being that dental hygienist that I no longer was. So the second company that I joined, so the first company, I did not leave by choice. The company sold and they decided not to have any representatives anymore. And then I found myself in another company, and it was their gratitude ambassador program
Mm.
that really lit me up. So you had to fill out this application. It's pretty lengthy at the time. The bottom question was if you were a certain rank in the company at that time. And I was like, well, I reached the rank, but I'm not maintaining the rank. So they're probably not going to pick me to be this representative for all their give back efforts in the field, right? Across the country, actually in other countries too. So I said, you know what? If nothing else, I just figured out that this is the person I've been my whole life, because my parents were the family that took everybody in. They adopted everybody. My dad would coach football and he would purchase equipment for the kids that families couldn't afford it. Like they were always giving back and always supportive. So I was like, it was on paper now. I saw it on paper, which I never realized before. So I said, you know what? I've took the time and energy to fill this out. I'm sending it in, not expecting anything. A couple months go by. We have our virtual conference because this was 2020. And I'm looking up at my TV above my desk, and they're like, okay, we're going to announce the 2020, 2021 class of gratitude ambassadors. And there's my picture smack in the middle of my screen. And I just started bawling my eyes out because I was not expecting it.
Yeah.
I kind of hate saying this word, but it was like validation for me.
Right.
We shouldn't always want and look for validation. Like we should just be happy within ourselves. But I was like, it was validation
Sure.
of who I was, and that like, oh my gosh, they see that.
Yeah.
And so that year of being a gratitude ambassador and doing a lot of things virtually because we weren't in person yet, was one of the most gratifying times of my life. And when that was over, I was considered alumni, which was great, but it still wasn't the same as being in the thick of it.
Right.
And that's how the podcast came about, because I needed something to take the place of being the gratitude ambassador, where I could talk to people and talk about the causes they really cared about most.
Well, you segued right into my next question.
Mm-hmm.
You describe yourself as a gratitude ambassador. What does that mean to you, and how has gratitude shaped your healing, your life?
You know, in the times of going through the work-related injury and kind of giving up that part of myself, I was not thinking gratitude. It took years for me to realize that in every situation, there was a lesson and there's a blessing. And I encourage everybody to do this. If you're going through the thick of something that is traumatizing, traumatic, heartbreaking, just even some kind of struggle, look for the lesson and look for the positivity in it and look for the gratitude piece in it, because finding the gratitude piece is what's going to help fuel your resilience.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the launch of the Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities podcast and what you have learned about purpose through your guest stories.
You know, I would say about 90% of the guests that have been on the podcast, what they're doing now is not what they started out doing. And so I kind of always say in the beginning of each episode, where I talk to my guests about their stories of transformation,
Mm-hmm.
because there's something that happened that led them to what they're doing now, which often led to their passion and their purpose merging together.
Right.
And so from every single person, I feel like I get a personal coach anytime I talk to somebody, because there's lessons in everybody's story, right? Everybody has a story, everybody has a lesson that they could share, whether it's a story of resilience, but you know, everybody's story of resilience is different. So, well, maybe it's somebody who, you know, went through divorce and they relied on their ex-husband for everything.
Yeah.
And now here they have to find their way again. They need to make a path for themselves. And if they have kids, them and their children. Or maybe it's somebody else like myself that, you know, has a disability that they no longer can do what they can do. And it's like
Right.
finding that thing that lights them up, that gives them passion and purpose. So, you know, I had a young man on who became blind in an accident. He was in the Air Force and he was on his motorcycle and he, you know, had this accident, became blind, but he is doing amazing work, amazing things. A keynote speaker, inspiring other people. Like he says, just because I'm blind doesn't mean I don't have vision.
I love that.
Right. And these are the
Yes.
things that I get to hear and experience. And it makes me feel like, well, he went through this. I know I can get through that. And it's my hope that the listeners take things like that away from the episodes as well.
Absolutely. Well, that's why they call you the gratitude ambassador, because you see it as an opportunity to learn
Yeah.
and to embrace what these folks are telling you, to be open to these new lessons and to this wisdom. What a beautiful platform for others to share their resiliency, their tenacity, their wisdom. And that's fantastic. Now, you were part of a collaborative book that features 23 women transforming dreams into reality. How did that project come about, and what impact has it made for you and for others?
This was a great opportunity to connect with other women. It came about because I had a guest named Kathy Dirksen. She calls herself the curator. So she's like the go-between the authors and the publishing company.
Gotcha.
And she came on as a guest. I met her through a workshop. Mutual friend was doing a workshop, and she said, I would like to be a guest on your podcast. I was like, okay. Had a pre-call, did this interview. And at the end, after we were not recording, she asked me if I would like to do a book inspired by the podcast. And I was
Mm,
like, okay, but you know, might be hard to find women that will really want to do this book. And it was hard. It took a long time for this to come together. But I learned from a dear friend of mine that whoever is supposed to be there will be there and show up. And I had that in the back of my head so that I didn't stress about where are we going to find all these women. And I truly believe that the right women for this book showed up.
Oh, that is fantastic. And what is the title of this book?
It's called Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities, Transforming Dreams into Reality
And they can find it where?
on Amazon.
Fantastic. And when did this come out?
This came out September 30th, 2025.
Okay. Now, one of the other things that you also have mentioned, and we've talked about it, is loss.
There's been a lot.
Do you want to share some of that with us?
Sure. Loss of job definitely kind of made me feel a loss
Yes.
of purpose there. So that was a big one. And just as a little side note, I truly believe I manifested that in a negative way.
Mm.
So if you're thinking about manifesting and you want all these things, really be careful what you wish for. I wanted to be home with my kids more.
Oh, interesting.
And I used to hope that something would happen that wasn't life threatening that would allow me to be home with them. And trust me, that was not a good wish. That was not a good wish.
Mm.
It's now going on 29 years of chronic pain. So
Mm.
don't wish things like that. So that was a loss. And then, I've had two miscarriages, in between my two sons. So while that might not have been as hard for me as for many, many women,
Yeah.
I definitely feel for them. But like one of them, I didn't even know I was pregnant. The
Mm.
second one, I did know I was pregnant. I wasn't too far along, but still, I still felt it. I
Oh,
still,
sure. Yeah.
felt like, it's always the what if, right? How do you
Right.
deal with the what if and the not knowing?
Absolutely.
And, moved 3,000 miles away from my family when my first husband got a job transfer. So we had no family, no friends, no help. My kids were 5 and 9. It was very difficult
Yeah.
until we started to have a community. But I think the hardest one, I would say, is the loss of my brother to suicide.
That is really hard
Yes.
and challenging.
And that's why, you and I have talked offline
Yes.
before. And I've said, anytime I get a chance to talk about mental health and try to stop the stigma, I'm there for that conversation. It affects more of us than people realize. I've learned a lot from my grief counselors and coaches that have been on the podcast.
Yeah.
And grief is cumulative. And if we don't process one situation, the next time we go through some form of grief, it's going to be worse because it's more to deal with. And people just try to like squash that conversation. They don't want to talk about it. There's still this, taboo or stigma around it. And my brother died in 2003. So it's better than it was 22 years ago, but we still have a long way to go.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we're here having this conversation still about stigmas, right?
Mhm.
A few years ago, I worked with veterans and we stood up a 501(c)(3) to help veterans, to help reduce the stigma of suicide and mental health issues, right? And we were talking about it then, and I drove across country with two other military spouses and we talked to veterans about the issue of mental health and suicide related issues. And they were reluctant to talk about it. They were reluctant to talk about it with professionals. They wanted to, if they were going to talk about it, they were going to talk about it with their peers.
Right. Mhm.
And that was because they felt more understood. They felt like there's less of a stigma because of that understanding, that peer connection and not be necessarily so clinical, but where they can vent, where they can have safe spaces. So places like your podcast, places like my podcast, places like where we create safe spaces for that conversation, it's extremely helpful.
Yeah. I had a Vietnam POW as a guest, and it was one of the most powerful conversations I've had. Yeah.
Yeah. All of our stories, they have meaning, they have value, they have purpose, and they have possibility.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing your story today. Much of what you've been through from disability, how you got there, your own thoughts about what you were manifesting in your life, what you might have changed in your life, how you were resilient through these changes. Thank you so much for just sharing all of this. We've covered so much. As we come to the close of the interview, my last question is, what's one tip you'd offer to someone who feels stuck in pain or feels a lack of purpose right now?
I think I would tell them to look at the things that you've accomplished, something that you were resilient, you showed resiliency. Because one of the things I think we really forget to do is look at those positive things. We're always thinking about like the worst or the what if, trying to be like in the future or worrying about the past, instead of acknowledging something that we have created or accomplished, and then saying to ourselves, you know what? I got through this situation in the past. I can take on this challenge that I'm dealing with now. So know that you're stronger than you think you are.
Thank you so much, Candice, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
You can connect with Candice Snyder on Facebook, LinkedIn, on her Facebook group, Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities, and her Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.